Good evening and welcome to the miNEStry. I am Archbishop Dracul, and alongside me is Father Avram. Our creed is to inspire our parishioners with reflections on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Tonight we are reflecting on Legendary Wings, which was a 1986 arcade game developed and published by Capcom, which was later released for the NES in North America in July of 1988. Capcom was responsible for porting popular arcade games to the NES like Commando, Gunsmoke, and Ghosts and Goblins. They also created games based off of Disney-licensed franchises like Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, DuckTales, and Darkwing Duck. Capcom was also responsible for the creation of the phenomenon known as Rockman, aka Mega Man in North America. Tonight our visiting Deacon is once again Jeff Gabor.
Hey.
Welcome.
Glad to be back.
An offering for the original arcade game. While we'll be covering the NES version of the game throughout this episode, there are a few important things to discuss. The reason why you may not have realized the NES game was originally an arcade game was because according to ArcadeMuseum.com, only 228 machines were released in the United States in 1986.
That's not a lot, at all.
Out of the 228 released, they came in one of two versions, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So if you see one in the wild, consider yourself lucky.
I wonder how these were distributed, too. I've never seen an arcade machine of this game. So I kind of wonder, did it even get distributed in my state? I don't know.
If I had to guess, I would say in California and its surrounding areas. The only reason why I say this is because I have a good friend who collects arcade machines. And he found one in an auction in Banning, California, at what was formerly known as the Museum of Pinball. It ended up going for around $1,200.
I mean, that would make sense if it was coming from Japan, I guess.
It's funny, it was a hit though, right? Over in Japan.
It was, yeah.
So, the original warriors in the Japanese arcade game were female soldier Michelle Hart and male soldier Kevin Walker, which was changed to two nameless male protagonists for the releases outside of Japan, except Set 2. Set 1 was the two nameless male protagonists. Set 2 was a male protagonist along with Michelle, but her bikini top was changed to green for some reason. Michelle makes a cameo years later in the very first Marvel vs. Capcom game as a support character.
How bizarre is it? This is, I would say, not the most well-known game ever, and the arcade's even less well-known. And then for this, one of the characters that was removed for half of the arcades, it ends up showing up 15, 20 years later in Marvel vs. Capcom. It is so bizarre.
The other thing that's really strange about this is that usually, I think for these types of games, and we mentioned it in our last episode, it's usually Japanese names that get removed or changed to be more American names, but the Japanese version of the game had the most American, bland American names that they could have. Michelle Hart and Kevin Walker, that straight up sounds like they belong a duet on the next, country album of the 80s. So strange.
Differences in the game. The arcade version utilized a vertical monitor, making the play space feel more pinched when compared to the NES port, therefore making it much more difficult. Maneuvering around the arcade game is very difficult and frustrating at times.
I mean, the arcade was way too hard. I gave up on it pretty fast.
Wow. That's saying a lot coming from you.
It just didn't even feel fair. especially once you got into it, you're about to get into it with the side-scrolling levels. Like that was ridiculous.
Yeah, and that was another difference. The side-scrolling levels was actually like platforming. Like you could jump, and you're not flying really. You jump, and you shoot, and you climb ladders like Load Runner. And the only time you're flying in those side-scrolling levels is at the very end when the floor falls out from underneath you, and you have to fight a boss, which in the NES port doesn't exist in the minus levels. Some other minor changes was that I noticed that the bombs were inconsistent. Like I couldn't shoot them all the time, like almost as if they had a cooldown, but I couldn't pinpoint how it worked exactly.
You know, it didn't dawn on me till now, but those side-scrolling levels were like, I don't know if you felt it, but the mechanics were a little janky in terms of jumping and running. But you know what it felt like? It felt like Ghosts and Goblins. Like that's kind of like it felt like you're committed to jumps, or it just kind of felt like super difficult.
That's freaking spot on right there. Very good assessment. So that's all we're going to say about the arcade games. You have an idea of kind of what we're talking about when we move into discussing the NES port, which we will do now.
A testament to the creators. Takashi Nishiyama, game director. Takashi's been credited on over 92 games. That's just astounding.
Mm-hmm.
And this includes being the lead designer in the 1982 arcade version of Moon Patrol. He was a game designer for the 1985 NES and 1984 arcade version of Kung Fu Master. And I'm not sure exactly what this position means, but his position was direction for the 1987 arcade Street Fighter. It's just an interesting position that you don't really hear about with older games specifically. Like, I'm guessing direction is director, essentially.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, you hear more of that, like, in modern games where there's, like, cinematics and stuff like that. But for a game like Street Fighter, it's an interesting title, for sure.
When I found out the director of Kung Fu Master made Legendary Wings, it gave it a few points in my book. I love Kung Fu Master. I think I have every version of the game in its physical form to include its arcade machine. It was the very first arcade game I ever played, and I have loved it ever since.
Yeah, it's great.
Please proceed, Father Avram.
Nobuaki Matsushima, The Mysterious Mo, and Nano no Ohiso. Programming trio that worked on this NES version of Legendary Wings, and also Mega Man in 1987, Street Fighter 2010, The Final Fight in 1990 for the NES, and Saturday Night Slam Masters in 1993 for the arcade.
Yes, and Street Fighter 2010 is not to be mistaken as a Street Fighter game. It's absolutely not. The game is a lot like the Konami arcade game called Kicker, or otherwise known as Shaolin Road. It's one scrolling screen, and you have to defeat all the enemies on the screen before you can have the boss appear, and then you beat the boss, and then you move on to the next level.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I rented this game at some point later in the NES life cycle when, like, rental stores weren't really carrying NES games anymore. I don't remember a whole lot about it because it was the only time that I played it, but I do remember playing it, and it was a strange game for sure. Definitely not the Street Fighter of the SNES days, or even, you know, not even a derivative of thereof.
No, totally different.
I feel like it's underrated, to be honest. I think the weirdest thing about it is how the character does like a weird cartwheel in the air as his jump, so that kind of throws people off, I think. But you get past that, and it can be pretty cool.
I heard it's pretty difficult.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Please proceed, Father Avram.
Yasaki Kishimoto, Yu Ki, Hironori Matsumura, Naoya Tomita, and Akira Kitamura. All of these people were in the design department for Legendary Wings, as well as Section Z in 1987 for the NES. Mega Man 1 through 6 from 1987 to 1993 for the NES. And Willow, that's surprising to me, 1989 for the NES.
That's a good load of games there.
It is.
Willow is an absolute hidden gem on the NES. I rented that game when I was a kid, and I did not stop playing it the entire weekend until I beat it. I love that game.
I've played it a couple of times, and I do remember it being fun.
I'm gonna sit back and let Jeff Gabor gush about Mega Man 1 through 6.
I mean, honestly, that franchise is like everything to me. Like, I love those games. I love 3. I have fond memories of playing that before it was out with my dad, going to a little convention. Still play them today. Mega Man 9 and 10 are right there with 1 through 6 and feeling just like retro and cool. I don't know. What can you say? Like, they're the very top in terms of run and gun shooting, platforming games created, period. They're the best.
I mean, in general, I feel like Capcom had kind of a dream team of developers and designers. They knew how to make good stuff.
Yep, for sure. And the music. God, the music. So good.
Which is actually next up on the list. Tamayo Kawamoto, Manami Matsumi, Yoshihiro Yakaguchi. This trio worked on music and sound, not only for Legendary Wings, but also for Commando in 1986 for the NES, Mega Man for the NES in 1987, Mega Man 2 for the NES in 1988, and also DuckTales for the NES in 1989. All great games. I would say Commando, for me, honestly, is probably the one on this list that the music and sound, well, I didn't consider to be that great. However, it was also one of the earlier games. So it kind of makes sense that they were still kind of developing their workflow and their sound engine and, whatever tooling they were using to compose and create the music.
When you mentioned the last 2 games, Mega Man 2 and DuckTales, like whenever you see like a ranking of the best retro video game music, it's always like this debate. Is it the Wily music from Mega Man 2? Or is it the Moon song from DuckTales? They're the same guys. They have the top 2 single tracks in the history of the NES right there.
Crazy. Yeah, and Mega Man 2 is... I mean, Mega Man 2 and DuckTales and Mega Man, chock full of just fantastic chiptunes.
Yeah, they're all great tracks. Again, Commando,
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that, and it just goes on forever and ever.
Okay, gentlemen, let's move on. I could not find any review data for Legendary Wings for the NES prior to 2000. That being Hardcore Gaming 101 giving the game an 8 out of 10.
That's pretty generous.
Comparatively, yes. It's definitely a little on the high side, I'd say.
Yeah, like 1 being like Cheetah Man, and 10 being like Mega Man 3 and Legend of Zelda. I don't know if it's an 8. 8, that's high.
Oh, they must have really liked this shmup.
What did you just say?
Shmup?
What, did shoot 'em up too long to say now? Are we gonna start laughing in acronyms? LOL, LOL, LOL?
No,
Shall we expect your sermons in binary from now on, Father Avram?
no.
Holy wisdom tree. Stick to the script, Father, before we find ourselves drowning in a sea of emojis and hashtags. Now, where was I? Ah, yes. This is an interesting part that I added to the review process that we go through in the miNEStry, just because this game holds a place in my heart, and I've yet to figure out quite in what way. In the summer of 1988, I received my monthly Nintendo Fun Club magazine, which was the magazines that they would put out, the really thin magazines that they would put out pre-Nintendo Power. I actually started with the fold-out envelopes that they used to send out, and then that turned into a small magazine, and then that evolved into Nintendo Power. I should have kept all those things because they're worth a friggin' fortune now.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but I remember going through that magazine. It was the one with the guy with the hockey shirt on, playing RC Pro-Am, sitting on his chair playing RC Pro-Am. And I found this very small advertisement of the game. And it's one of the only ones that I can think of that exists, because I haven't been able to find anything else. It was a picture of what appeared to be an angel's wing with a screenshot of the game and the box art that stated the following. A reading from the ad. How to fly 20,000 years into the future. Trapped in the clutches of the evil dark computer, the world has only one hope. You. Armed with a few guns and missiles and your mechanical wings, you must battle Dark's warships, mines, and mutant monsters, then search out and destroy the tyrant itself. In Wings, you can soar, fly, and dive into action by yourself or with a second player simultaneously. Capcom, 1283C, Old Mountain View, Alviso Road, Sunnydale, California, 94089, 408-745-7081.
Please do not call that number.
They put their address and phone number in the magazine.
It'd be really funny to actually call this number as a kid. I do have to wonder if it's not the address of Capcom, but like the address of like whatever advertising company put out this ad.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, it could be Capcom headquarters in California. Sure, it sounds plausible. Yeah. I just want to interject one thing here that took me aback as you read this. I'm floored that they call this Wings. I've only ever called this Legendary Wings.
I noticed that too, and it was very interesting how that just didn't catch on. And when you look at the packaging, you could get away with calling it that. Like, Legendary is very small type on the top of these big lettered wings.
I mean, it sort of goes in line with, everybody called The Legend of Zelda, right? And that was the big letters on the box, and The Legend of kind of faded in the background. But you could call it either one. It's just, they were probably trying to do the same thing, I'm guessing, but it's just I've never, ever heard it called Wings before.
Moving on with the story, 11-year-old me at the time was very impressed. I had recently played through Kid Icarus, and I was really excited about the prospect of another adventure game kind of like it. So I remember going with my father at Child World to get it for my birthday, and when I got home, I was bummed to find out it was an arcade shooter and not an adventure game like Kid Icarus. My father did his best to return it, but the policy was already in place where you could only return an open game for one of the same copy. So he brought it back home, and I was pretty much stuck with it. I played it an awful lot, but I always had this tinge of resentment toward it for not being a game like Kid Icarus. And I know that's stupid.
It's just interesting. Like, you were looking for a Kid Icarus clone, essentially, right? Like basically like a Kid Icarus 2, as it were.
Yeah, and I was so young that I see the wings, I'm like, ooh!
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I definitely did that a lot as a kid too, with games that had similar designs or whatever.
Yeah.
What were your guys' earliest memories of the game?
Oh man, I go right to this all-night sleepover with a friend, hanging out in his basement. It's like concrete floor. It's like you can smell it, and firing it up, sitting right next to him, playing this all the way to the end. It's like so vivid. I think that's why this game ends up like having a special place.
I do remember watching my father and my older brother playing it a lot. In fact, one specific memory that I have was my mother was out and they were playing it, and I don't know, I was really young, so details are blurry, but I remember them getting like pretty far in the game and being pretty excited, and I think my father lost track of time, and then he was like, "Oh shit, get to bed quick," as my mother was coming home, and she would have been like really ticked off that I was still up. And I think that actually happened quite a bit with various games, but I remember this one being one of the first.
Let us now discuss the 7 categories for which we execute judgment on legendary wings. Category 1 is the narrative.
A reading from the manual. Ares, god of war, gave 2 young men courage and wings of love to save the world from extinction. Ares entrusted them with the survival and the future of the human race. Time is of essence. Take wings. Legendary wings. This is a reading from the manual. Praise be Capcom.
The Wings of Love? All I think about is that 80s song by Jeffrey Osborne.
Yeah.
And I can't put a clip in it here because I'd get a copyright strike, so you'll just have to look it up yourself. What we're going to do now, since the story in the manual was so truncated, we're going to skip ahead and read the back of the box, because the back of the box has a lot more to offer in terms of critiquing story. So please, Father Avram, read the back of the box.
A reading from the back of the box. 20,000 years in the future, mankind has built a giant supercomputer named Dark to rule the planet. For hundreds of years, Dark has governed with wisdom and justice. But now the unthinkable has happened. Dark is malfunctioning, and humanity is writhing in the grasp of a ruthless tyrant. Dark has built a fleet of robot warships to patrol the skies, and has created an army of mutant monsters to guard the underground bases from which he now terrorizes mankind. Lulled by hundreds of years of peace, the people of Earth are defenseless against the minions of Dark. But 2 brave young men, following an ancient legend of Greek mythology, have devised mechanical wings to bear them aloft in search of Dark's hidden fortress. Armed with the last remaining guns and missiles from a crumbling arsenal, You must fly them across the continents and oceans to seek out and destroy the cruel Colossus. Robot warships and floating mines are a constant menace, and you must beware of the giant head, a grotesque stone face guarding the entrance to each of Dark's underground bases. If you approach too near to its gaping mouth, you will be sucked into the depths, where bizarre mutant monsters prowl the corridors. If you fail, mankind is lost. Take wing, legendary soldiers. A reading from the back of the box. Praise be Capcom.
So you can kind of see why I kind of encourage the reading of the back of the box to supplement the reading from the manual. Mm-hmm. There's definitely more to talk about from the back of the box, and there's virtually nothing to talk about in the manual, which leads me to believe the folks at Capcom were more concerned with sales rather than making a story-based game.
I mean, and remember, it's an arcade port, too. So, I mean, there is zero story exposition within the game itself. It's literally, I mean, as soon as you start playing it, you can see the arcade, right? It's like, this is meant, you just put in quarters and look, hey, cool, I'm flying around shooting things, right? It's like, that's the hook. But now they're bringing it to the NES, where I know a lot of these arcade machines actually came with their own instruction manuals and actually sometimes had story to it that wasn't in, the actual game. I wonder if the manual of the arcade version has any semblance of this story whatsoever.
I think I saw some promo material that basically was a mix of those two messages. It had the mention of Ares, and then it also was basically almost exactly what you read from the back of the box. So it was a bit of both. So I think it did come from the arcade, and maybe that's why you get Capcom trying to split it in two for the two different readings. I'm not sure, but
I mean, it's just so strange though, because the back of the box story, it's almost a totally different vibe.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, other than the Greek mythology references, Ares isn't mentioned once on the back of the box. The supercomputer isn't mentioned once in the manual.
Oh, and also the wings of it's very specific on the back of the box that they're mechanical wings.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden in the manual, they're wings of love.
I gotta sing it. On the wings of love. This is gonna sound kind of dumb, but I feel like the story is almost prophetic in a way, where we're living in a world where AI is starting to take over, and you have this situation where we have an election, not to get into politics, but we have an election coming up soon, and both candidates are human, so they are fallible. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that eventually humans as a race could elect an official that is an AI. Of course, that'll probably end up turning bad like it did here. But I found it kind of interesting. It's because they're talking about people lived in peace, and they've lived in peace so long that they hadn't maintained their weapons. So now they have to devise these mechanical wings. It is kind of stupid though. You're in this sort of hyper sci-fi sort of Greek mythology era, and you have to use mechanical wings to fight the enemies. But I mean, I guess that goes back to the fact that the weapons are useless and they kind of have to devise whatever they could. I don't know. It's kind of strange.
I mean, there's no other word for it. It is very strange. Again, I kind of feel like they were making a shmup that, when you play it, is very much just another shmup where you're flying around as something with wings.
You filthy little weasel. Now you must gargle with lie.
No, Archbishop! Not the lie! Anything but the lie! Lash me, beat me, pull out my fingernails, but not the lie! It burns, Archbishop, it burns!
Jesus.
This is like writing, Xevious and all of the others type of games that were just like this, and everybody, especially in Japan, was so obsessed with Xevious that I think everybody was looking to make their own version. And there you go, you got Legendary Wings, and they're like, all right, well, here's an excuse. Let's make this weird story.
Maybe I'm trying to look into it too deeply.
Well, I mean, the most unbelievable part about the story is the fact that it would take 20,000 years for this to happen. This is going to happen in the next 5 years.
But again, like one thing that you mentioned earlier was you're convinced that they were just there to make sales, right? And so it makes sense for them to pull in a very, very popular theme into this game to try to boost those sales. It kind of backs up that point.
Mm. Let us proceed to category 2, which is audio. For me, I felt like the music had a lot of atmosphere and fit the tone of the levels really well. My favorite song on the soundtrack is the music played during the high score screen. I also really enjoyed level 2's theme, the water one. It really felt like the music really went hand in hand with the water theme really well. I think the sound effects are great. There's a lot of previous Capcom game sound effects that were ripped from, like, Mega Man, for instance. But I will say, the music, while fitting the tone well, still feels rather simple or even grating at times.
Yeah. And for the most part, forgettable.
I mean, I don't know if I totally agree with it being forgettable. I guess, yeah, for the most part, I guess that's accurate. But in the moment, when you're listening to these tracks, I just get this feeling of like, hell yeah. Like it very much pulls you into the atmosphere of the game very well. I think I agree with Archbishop Dracul that the high score screen track is the best. It's very epic feeling, right? It's like it has all those feels behind it. I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack for me has always been the best part of the game.
I did not expect you to say that. I don't know why it didn't really like speak to me. Like I just, when you said it was grating at times, like that's the part that stuck out to me. I don't know. It just didn't resonate with me. It's like it's trying to live up to Capcom name with like Mega Man and stuff, and I was like, this is not Mega Man. So I think it just got dinged just because of its people's pedigree that made it.
So I would like to tack on to this one thing in my cons in regards to audio, specifically the music, was when I think of the soundtrack of this game, I am talking about like the overworld soundtrack and all the other connecting parts. The side-scrolling soundtracks are horrible. They're just bad. In both the bonus and the danger zones, they're just bad.
The bonus lucky one is so out of place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it drags on forever. It's like, here is a 5-minute section of collecting points. All right.
Yeah, it's really slow, too. It feels almost slower than the regular side-scrolling.
Yeah, they definitely didn't need to drag those levels on as long as they did.
A little bit of grading, a little bit of forgetful. That's where I rest with it.
Let us proceed to Category 3, which is gameplay.
A reading from the manual. There are 5 stages in Legendary Wings. They consist of vertical and horizontal main stages. Within vertical stages, there are 2 kinds of substages. miNEStry. Large face with whirlpool. If you enter the whirlpool of a large face, you will enter the miNEStry. Dangerous horizontal scroll. Bonus stage. If you destroy certain structures on ground of vertical stages, a whirlpool will appear. Contact with it will enable you to enter bonus horizontal stage. Power-up sequence. 1. Normal shots. Shots you get at the start of the game. 2. Twin laser. If you pick up a power-up item, you'll get a twin laser. It's very effective against multiple enemies. Does twice the damage of normal shots. 3. Penetration. If you pick up 2 items consecutively, you'll get a penetration. It is very powerful and can penetrate enemy vehicles. Damage is 3 times of normal shots. 4. Flame shots. If you pick up 3 items consecutively, you'll pick up a flame shot. This will shoot in 3 directions. Very effective against scattered enemies. Damage is 2 times of normal shots. 5. Firebird. If you pick up 4 items consecutively at the last power-up, you'll obtain a Firebird which can withstand 2 direct hits from the enemy. Damage is 4 times of normal shots. Damage. If you get hit at normal stage, you will lose 1 player. If you get hit during a power-up, power level will drop. However, if you are a Firebird, power will drop 1 level after 3 hits. Continuation. You may continue the game as many times as you obtain hearts, maximum of 9 times. This is a reading from the manual. Praise be Capcom.
I have more cons than I do pros here. I would say that it's fun to play and it's easy to understand. Like, you pick it up, you just start shooting, and that's pretty much it. It's very simple, but there are some things about it that there is a fly in the pudding, so to speak. Unlike the arcade, where you get power-ups by killing enemies, there are power-ups that fling from the sides of the screen. And that's during the vertical stages. The side-scrolling stages, they'll just be sitting there. But in those vertical stages, when they fling onto the screen, if you do not shoot it first, it will either harm you or kill you. I had it happen once, and I think I have it on video somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think I want to say it actually just straight up killed me.
Yep.
So just be very careful when you see something fly on the screen. Just shoot it, regardless of whatever it is. Sometimes it's cheap, and you'll be flying along the sides, and then suddenly it'll just come from the side and just knock you over. The power-up system is kind of flawed, and here's why. I found the best way to get through the game was on your first continue, by carrying over your power-ups from the previous level. If you completely die and have to use continues, especially in later levels, it's almost impossible to gain any traction power-up wise.
Yeah.
The hierarchy of power-ups, it works like 1 level at a time. But on the grand scale of things, it makes the game very difficult at times.
Yeah. You nailed it, man. That's my biggest con is, like, once you lose your powers, you might as well just reset the whole console.
Yeah. That's not even a joke. It's like, that's exactly what I would do.
Yeah, it would be much easier. Like, when I was playing it this last couple of weeks, yeah, you go if you're at a boss and you go completely lose your powers, just forget it. Forget it. You could get there and beat them faster than going through all of your 9 continues and wasting your time because you'll never do it.
I do have an interesting tidbit about that, Deacon Gabor.
Okay, let's hear it.
So that brings up my next point. The auto-scrolling mechanic in the side-scrolling levels feature getting killed if you get pinched between the side of a platform and screen left. I was looking for Kid Icarus, and I got this logic, which is a lot like in Kid Icarus when if the platform you were standing on moments ago just goes below the bottom of the screen and you fall, you die. Same sort of stupid logic like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. I was at the last boss and defeated its first biomechanical form. Upon its destruction, what's left of the boss starts moving directly at you with the idea that you have to fly in through the beast to reach its true inner form. The way in is the same size as the player's sprite, so you have to have pixel perfect accuracy when going in. I was in Thunderbird form and had my head clipped at the top of the entryway, and I couldn't correct it fast enough before getting my head squished between the top of the entrance and screen left, leaving me with only my level 1 firepower to face the final boss. Luckily, I had 9 lives. But it took 8 to defeat the boss with my
Wow, that's cutting it close.
level 1 power up. And may I just say the last boss is very anticlimactic. Like its second form, I was expecting to be like, oh my god, I'm gonna get my ass kicked. No,
Yeah,
not at all. Not at all. Other things. When in the lucky zone and you are destroying wall bricks, do not run up on them until the little fire swirl is gone. That fire swirl will kill you. No downgrade. It will kill you. I got screwed on that one too. So if you're sitting there like right up against the wall and you fire at the wall in front of you to get a heart that's in there, and then you fly over it before that little fire swirl goes away, you get just straight up smoked.
I never tried that. That's funny.
There are lots of repetitive visuals and enemies in level design and gameplay. For example, every top-down level always has a face that tries to pull you into the minus world. Always has a Lucky hidden under the cannons on the ground somewhere. Then always has a Ghostbuster dog field where you have to destroy the last 2 before leading to the last enemy of every level, which is a dragon. The same one every time with a different palette swap.
Yeah, it's got a palette swap, but it's got the exact same like pattern too. It swings to the left, shoots 3 fireballs, swings to the right. It's like, wow, this is wow, they didn't even want to mix up the randomness at all. Okay.
No, and it goes on. This is followed by a side-scrolling level that does look different for each level, but you face the same biomechanical horror at the end. Each time. They just inch at you closer, exposing more eyeballs to shoot at you, therefore making it harder. Like, I know it's an early shooter, but having an auto-fire function when you hold down the button, this game begs for that. Like, my thumb was just killing me sometimes after fighting, especially that last boss. I was just like,
oh man, you know what I ended up doing? I switched to piano grip. Like, started like using my pointer finger and my middle finger to do it because I couldn't shoot fast enough with my thumb, and it was getting just annoying, and it was hurting my thumb. So I was like, screw it, I'm switching to piano grip.
Do you have a speed board?
No speed board, no. Come on, man. I ain't that nerdy. I did try one once. I was trying to say, can I be one of those people that mashes really good on Ninja Gaiden? Let me try it. No.
Does it make a difference?
Yeah, I mean it does. It make like just the way it reverberates. You can actually be able to like get a little faster, but it's not worth it.
Okay, my last con, and this is my last one. is that the warp gun is garbage as a level 4 power-up. Even in the manual, it says it's weaker than the third one, which is penetration. They say the warp gun is 2 times the damage, or penetration is 3 times the damage. So I hated that thing. I don't know how you guys felt.
No, I was always just looking to get past it. I never wanted to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I benefited from the flame shots. Was it the flame shots? That's the one that's like, you guys are talking about the one where like it's wavy, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There was one spot where I benefited from having a power up was on one of the horizontal levels, and I mean, I could have dodged the thing. It was one of those laser machine things on the ceiling, and it was right there, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm not going to be able to shoot this thing, and it's going to chase me. So I just kind of stood at the entrance, and it happened to be that the flame shots actually reached high enough to hit it, so I could just destroy it. But that was the only benefit that thing ever gave me.
Yep.
It was quasi helpful in the vertical levels, but not to any great. I mean, it had major flaws.
I feel like it would never hit anything.
Yeah, the ones that go side to side, I think you can only have one on screen at any time. So it's like,
oh, it's a Deadly Towers thing.
I know. I was just gonna say it's giving me that vibe again.
Yeah. Yep. So, but yeah, definitely, hands down, agree. The flame shots power up it feels like a downgrade.
Yeah, not as bad as the parallel shot, though. I will say.
Oh God, yeah. No, the parallel shot in Deadly Towers is.
And I can mention that because we all three went through the same shit.
Yeah, the parallel shot, man. You have to go through so much to get it. Screw that.
It's like the anti-power up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say before you start, Father Avram, that I did find that the ROMs that I was trying to play on, the emulators, I tried a bunch of different ones, and I would have a very hard time and couldn't get past level 1. So finally I said, screw it. I went into my basement, grabbed the actual cartridge, brought it upstairs, threw it in my AVS, and I got to level 4 no problem, like the first shot. And I found the controls to be so much more tight, like not as like swimmy, so to speak. So mark that one against emulation.
So I played this game on cart, so I didn't have those problems. However, I still couldn't beat this damn game. And for the reasons that were already mentioned, for the most part, when you lose your power-ups, you become totally useless. And it becomes the worst form of bullet hell, especially when this happens at stage 4. I continually would hit all the lucky zones, get, max out my continues, get to stage 4. Now granted, I played it enough where I did, on levels 1, 2, and 3, lose all of my power-ups at some point and was able to regain them. Like, got through level 1 fine, and then like level 2, like kicked my ass, and then I lost all my power-ups and was able to continue. But because that lucky zone is there in level 2, I could regain my power-ups and it wasn't a big deal. Same thing with level 3. However, in level 4, I couldn't find the damn lucky zone. And I looked it up in a walkthrough, and supposedly there's like a blank space in between 2 of the pink tubes where you can find the lucky zone. I never found it. Even not like, I only started looking for it when I needed it, right? Because I was like, well, I'm not going to like die because I'm looking for this thing. But when I needed it, I'd burn through all of my continues looking for that damn lucky zone.
Yeah, I couldn't find it either, to be honest with you.
It was a brick wall. Level 4 for me was a brick wall. I think I got to one of the several times that I got to level 4. I actually got to the last boss and died at the last boss. But when I got to the last boss, I was at like, I don't know, I had lost quite a few power-ups already. For some reason, the vertical level on level 4 just really did me in.
Flashbacks to Kabuki Quantum Fighter.
Yeah, same thing. Like Kabuki Quantum Fighter for me was, I hit level 3 and it was a brick wall. Same thing here for me for Legendary Wings. I just could not get by it. And I think it's a major flaw in the game design. It has this feeling like, hey guys, you're not building a quarter eater anymore here. Like, you can kind of give people a break. I've heard from both of you and seen that level 5 also has a lucky zone. So I don't know what the big freaking deal is.
I'm looking at my retro achievements because I played this through emulation so I could do the retro achievements, and I got it. I got all 5 secret areas. I didn't have to. I don't know. I guess I must have just been lucky. Yeah.
No pun intended.
Got lucky. Getting lucky.
Did you have the penetration power up when you got lucky?
Right. Yeah.
Deacon Gabor, I'm really excited to hear your gameplay.
Okay. So I agree with everything you guys said, but the one thing you didn't mention that saves it, that puts the gameplay all the way back up, is the 2-player mode, which is something you guys didn't test out just in the last couple of weeks. But I'm telling you, you get to play this with a friend and a buddy on, couch co-op, and it completely changes the game. Like, it makes it a whole lot more fun and enjoyable, and it was also just so incredibly rare back in the day that you could do 2 players at the same time.
That's very true.
It was one of the first ones I can remember, really, for the NES.
Yeah.
I mean, before that was like Karate Champ, but who the hell wants to play that shit?
Because, like, in terms of, like, shoot 'em ups, right? Like, this came out right around the same time as Life Force hit the NES. And Life Force was freaking cool, but it doesn't have the 2-player mode, right? So that's why this thing still stands on its own, is because of just that feature alone.
That feature apparently has a major flaw, though, that I will bring up later in technical. But I will definitely play this again if I could find somebody who would want to.
Yeah, that's the problem. You got to find somebody that actually wants to fly on the wings of love with you.
Yeah, right. Let us proceed to category 4, which is the graphics. I found the graphics representation to be very solid and clear. Level 2 has my favorite background art, with my cons being, while the graphics may be good, they aren't very cohesive. It's a weird mishmash of Greek mythology and sci-fi mixed with themes of biological and mechanical horror.
Yeah, good point there.
That's where it falls flat for me.
I enjoyed the graphics. I think that they were, once again, well done, Capcom. However, definitely agree that there was just some kind of disconnect. It wasn't very consistent. I didn't like the biological elements, especially in light of the story from the back of the box specifically. Like flying through the danger zones and have these weird like mouths on the walls and stuff like that. Like, it was just very, very odd. Very, like you said, like kind of nightmarish horror more than, being this sci-fi super epic that it's kind of toting itself to be.
Not to mention, like, so this whole thing is supposed to be like a mix of like Greek mythology and then going way into the future and mixing the two. Well, if you happen to get lucky and go into a lucky zone, all of a sudden you're thrown into Egyptian art.
Oh, God, you're so right. Yes.
Somebody did not do their research, because what the hell is going on there?
Maybe that's why the music's so different. It's a completely different game. The Lucky Zone is a completely different game.
You're collecting like pharaoh tokens and like little like serpents. It's just so off.
That was actually the first iteration of the game, which was Lucky Pyramid Wings.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I do like the 1-up sound effect. Every time I'm in the lucky zone, I hear that. I'm like, yes.
I mean, it's satisfying to hear that, but I thought it was annoying. Like, it was so loud and just like took over all the sound on the sound chip.
Yeah, it was pretty loud.
Yeah, it's just like, we're gonna make sure you know that you got another life. It was just a little disruptive, I'd say.
Yeah.
Man, I wish those hearts would have been like extra hits you could take to not get downgraded. Because I don't need the lives. I need more shields, like more HP. You know.
Yeah.
That came in really handy when you were the Thunderbird.
Yeah.
It's just like you get 2 extra hits, 3 extra hits. It's like, man, you could beat the whole game and
You get the 3 hits, but the thing that they screw you on is that when you get the Firebird power up, you get 3 hits, right? You get those 3 hits, but if you pick up another power up, like if you get 1 hit and then pick up another power up, it does not reset it to 3. You still just have those 3 hits. So like the power up that you just collected is essentially useless. Like I would expect it to at least bump up my HP back to max.
Right. Because it would almost like behoove you to take a couple hits, then collect the power up to regain them all back. Yeah.
Right.
Can I just say I also really loved the graphics of the Thunderbird. I thought it was really cool.
I think that's cool, except for they didn't carry it over to the side-scrolling part. Like you're flaming, but you're no longer like this cool-looking phoenix bird thing. Like that was a disappointment. Like once I became the Firebird, I was like, cool. I wonder what this is going to look like in the side-scrolling. No.
Yeah.
Not
no,
there.
you're still just a dude with mechanical wings that is now on fire.
Yeah.
Screaming the whole time. Oh no! Any other thoughts on the graphics, gentlemen?
Nah, other than that, I was going to just say, a lot of those like weird mouth in the background and that kind of stuff, at least it fit the 80s and 90s like gross out aesthetic that a lot of these games seem to be going for. So it felt of its time, I guess. I don't know if that's a pro or a con.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It totally was gross, I guess. That's what ruined it for me. It was just kind of like, what am I doing here? Like,
you know what else was very disturbing? That I'm starting to see a theme here. Is that you have the penetration gun, right? And you're going into the mouth of this head, and inside the mouth is this biological terror.
Which looks like a penis.
Looks like a penis. Not only that, on the way there are these little sperm things that fly up, that swim up to you and try to kill you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's a lot of
but then also you the only way you can hurt the enemy is when it takes the condom off, and then you have to shoot it in the glands.
You got to penetrate it.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of phallic representation in this game.
Yeah. I mean, the final boss, you literally have to like take like a colon down to go see him.
Yeah. Unless you get too close to the edge of the hole where you will get your ass killed.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah. It's very gross how very organic, and it a lot like, man, seriously, the main bad guy that you face at the end of each level is super phallic.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's the wings of love.
Fighting the evil phallus. Let us proceed to category 5, which is box art and presentation. Now, we already read from the back of the box for the benefit of critiquing the story of the game. So we will move ahead and discuss the artwork. When a young Archbishop Dracul saw this, I said, whoa. Hey, that guy looks like the dude from Star Trek with a gun and wings like Kid Icarus. I am so buying this for my birthday. I love it. I will also say there's great screenshots on the back. With my cons being, while the character on the cover is well rendered, I do wish there was more atmosphere in the background. And there's a translation error during the interstitial screens between levels. What it says is, we have cleared this area, and areas are still to be clear. Hold out for final victory.
Yeah, it looked like they just dropped the D.
I thought that the Capcom box was very Capcom. You know, that's kind of like a cop-out statement, but I thought the main character art on the front was done very well, except for the fact that I just didn't like the rendition of his gun. It just didn't seem to match that, and they're supposed to be like mechanical wings, but they don't look very mechanical. They look very organic. I guess feel like they were kind of riding on the coattails of like Marvel superheroes here, and then put some cool, G.I. Joe type gun in his hands. So although the artwork itself is really cool, it's derivative, and the color scheme is kind of bland.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it can be a pro or a con. It's definitely like simple. Like the cover of the box is definitely just like clean and simple. But for me, it did the same thing it did for Dracul, which is just it sort of drew me in. I wanted to look at the back of the box. There was enough on the back of the box. I was like, okay, this is good enough. I don't know. At least it's almost simplicity stood out to me, and it was interesting. Yeah, but it could have been better. That's for sure. I see that.
Let us proceed to category 6, which is fun factor. I am just going to say I feel bad for the 11-year-old me for not giving the game a chance for what it was, rather than resenting it for not being what I wanted it to be. But I can proudly say all these years later that I enjoyed playing it thoroughly.
I enjoyed it right up until level 4, and then it became extremely repetitive for me, just because I had to essentially play through the entire game over and over trying to get through that level 4. So if I think if it wasn't for that roadblock, really, it probably would have scored a little higher for me. But just because it was so monotonous trying to get through that brick wall, it turned out to not be very fun outside of the first few times that I played it.
Yeah. I mean, I can say like I had a good time playing it, but it's like how much of that is nostalgia weighing into it, and also just this game makes it easy for you to like go back and feel like it was like playing in the late 80s. And for those that weren't around for that, I don't know if this game would be enjoyable whatsoever. Especially when this was good in the context of its time. It's like, okay, 2-player at the same time. At that point, we weren't playing Dracul yet. Like, if you put this game side by side against Dracul, like, I would never play this game. Like Dracul, I would play 100 times before playing this once. But it's still like if you're sitting down every 5 years and firing it up and getting through the game and being done with it, yeah, it's still fun. But there's better things to play.
Let us proceed to category 7, which is technical. So I didn't experience any slowdown in the single-player game. But I didn't.
Wow.
But I did experience tons of sprite flickering. And I don't know, because I haven't done it recently, but I saw videos of how poorly the performance was as far as slowdown goes on the 2-player simultaneous.
I experienced a whole ton of slowdown. In some cases, it's the only thing that actually saved me. But it happened quite a bit for me on some of the vertical levels where I was doing more dodging than I was killing. It seemed like any time there was a lot of I'd have to say probably I'm going to go out on a limb and say anytime there was more than maybe 12 objects on screen, it started kind of chugging. Not sure entirely what they could have done to get around that, if anything, but that was definitely a problem for me. As far as bugs are concerned, I don't know if the stage 4 lucky zone qualifies or if they did that intentionally. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that they designed it that way. So I don't think that was a bug, but it's worth mentioning as a big question mark. Physics-wise, it was okay, but this is kind of a gray area with gameplay. But a lot of the hallways, like you mentioned, the pixel perfect areas that you had to squeeze through walls and stuff like that, I think they could have done that a little better, because that kind of got annoying in certain spots. Other than that, I don't think there's I don't have anything else down.
Yeah, and I didn't really note anything. Like nothing really stood out to me as like breaking the game for me. Not anything unexpected. It's like even when you played Mega Man, there was so much slowdown. So I don't know. It didn't stand out and bother me. I'm super interested though in going back. It's been so long since I've played 2-player. I wonder how bad it is.
From what I saw, it looked pretty significant.
Man, that would totally ruin it. I'm sure it was not noticeable at all when you're playing when you're 8 years old. But oh man, that would be really tough now.
I did find a really strange bug where I was in the side-scrolling levels and I was just kind of spamming the fire button in front of me, and as blocks behind me would hit the edge of the screen, they'd destroy.
Oh, really? It's like doing a screen wrap?
Yeah.
That's cool. There's a lot of NES games where you can do that. Like Zelda 2, you can do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know it's a tangent, but it's really cool what you can do if you're running through the palaces and you do a jump stab backwards. You can then kill those little like bouncing whatever. What are they? Like little dogs characters, but you can kill them by shooting backwards, and then your sword will screen wrap and hit them in the face.
Like
they're coming towards you.
An up stab?
No, like you should throw your beam backwards. So your beam goes off screen to the back, and then it'll wrap around to the front and kill the people that were going to be right in your face.
No way.
Super crazy, yeah.
Well, I mean, you have to remember or maybe you don't know, but they were using all, signed integer math. They had to check for all that stuff manually. Like, is this going to the other side of the screen? Because that's just the way it worked. You had a certain number of positions. You take 0 away from, or take 1 away from 0, and you're looped back around to 256. So they had to use a lot of register checks and stuff in order to prevent that type of thing from happening. So if they had a small bug in there that didn't do that check right, or if the math just kind of worked out that didn't throw the register correctly, then yeah, you're going to have screen wrap issues for sure.
That's cool.
Let us proclaim the hints and cheats of our game.
A reading from the manual.
There are no hints or cheats in this manual.
A reading from the manual. And now, brethren, let us offer each other the body of price. So, game price then and now. 1988, this game was $34.99, according to the 1988 Sears Wish book. I don't know what that is, by the way.
The Wish Book is basically the name of their Christmas catalog.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I never knew it was called that.
I loved getting that thing.
Yeah, all those catalogs with all that stuff was so cool. It was like half of Christmas right there.
Yeah, just circling what you wanted. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all online now. Somebody who has way too much freaking time on their hands went through and scanned every page.
Insane.
And there's like hyperlinks and a search engine and everything. It's remarkable. Like I'm impressed.
So according to data.bls.gov CPI inflation calculator, $34.99 in 1988 is worth $91.07 today in 2024. I could not imagine spending that much money on a video game.
It goes to show, like, video games back then were very much things you got for very big events, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the average person. Yep. Because they were f***ing expensive. And I think that the most expensive game I asked for was actually Bases Loaded at the time, in 87. It was one of the most expensive NES games at the time. And I believe it was around $45.99. But I mean that's probably over $100 in value.
Over $100 for sure. And we've had games reviewed here by the miNEStry that have been up at that price point. For some reason, this just sticks out for this game. Like, it feels like this game is overpriced.
Yeah.
But going into how much it costs today, according to pricecharting.com, a loose copy of this game, meaning cart only, is $11.86. Box only is $34. Manual only is $8.52. Complete in box is $61.12. And brand spanking new, unopened, is going to cost you $467.06.
Wow. I think that's the most expensive new game in miNEStry history.
I think it is. I'm not 100% sure, but I think most of our games have been in the 200 to 300 range.
I wonder why. Maybe because it's Capcom?
Yeah. I could be. I don't know. I mean, it could just be that there aren't many unopened copies of this game anymore.
It makes me wonder how many were actually made.
Yeah, I don't know that either.
Let us now execute judgment upon Legendary Wings and decide which of the 7 cardinal sins it has committed. Father Avram, in regards to narrative, what is your final judgment?
In regards to narrative, Legendary Wings has committed no fault.
Deacon Gabor, in regards to narrative, what is your final judgment?
In regards to narrative, Legendary Wings has committed a most heinous cardinal sin.
In regards to narrative and in the presence of this assembly, Legendary Wings has been spared. Father Avram, in regards to audio, what is your final judgment?
In regards to audio, Legendary Wings has committed no fault.
Deacon Gabor, in regards to audio, what is your final judgment?
In regards to audio, Legendary Wings has committed a most heinous cardinal sin.
In regards to audio and in the presence of this assembly, Legendary Wings has been spared. Father Avram, in regards to gameplay, what is your final judgment?
In regards to gameplay, Legendary Wings has committed a most heinous cardinal sin.
Deacon Gabor, in regards to gameplay, what is your final judgment?
In regards to gameplay, Legendary Wings has committed a most heinous cardinal sin.
In regards to gameplay and in the presence of this assembly, Legendary Wings has committed a loathsome cardinal sin deserving of hellfire and damnation.
1.
Father Avram, in regards to graphics, what is your final judgment?
In regards to graphics, Legendary Wings has committed no fault.
Deacon Gabor, in regards to graphics, what is your final judgment?
In regards to graphics, Legendary Wings has committed a most heinous cardinal sin. There's Egyptian artwork in there.
I know. In regards to graphics and in the presence of this assembly, Legendary Wings has committed a loathsome cardinal sin deserving of hellfire and damnation.
2.
Father Avram, in regards to box art and presentation, what is your final judgment?
In regards to box art and presentation, Legendary Wings has committed no fault.
Deacon Gabor, in regards to box art and presentation, what is your final judgment?
In regards to box art and presentation, it is clear Legendary Wings has committed a most heinous cardinal sin.
In regards to box art and presentation and in the presence of this assembly, Legendary Wings has been spared. Father Avram, in regards to fun factor, what is your final judgment?
In regards to fun factor, Legendary Wings has committed a most heinous cardinal sin.
Deacon Gabor, in regards to fun factor, what is your final judgment?
In regards to fun factor, Legendary Wings has committed no fault.
In regards to fun factor, and in the presence of this assembly, Legendary Wings has been spared. Father Avram, in regards to technical, what is your final judgment?
In regards to technical, Legendary Wings has committed no fault.
Deacon Gabor, in regards to technical, what is your final judgment?
In regards to technical, Legendary Wings has committed no fault.
In regards to technical and in the presence of this assembly, Legendary Wings has been spared. Gentlemen, if you have a talisman, play them now.
Nay. 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 Nay.
Legendary Wings, by the authority vested in me redeem you of any faults which you have committed, and hereby reveal you as a jewel in the crown of the Nintendo Entertainment System. Fly! Fly! This concludes tonight's service. Remember, our liturgy does not simply come to an end. Those assembled are sent forth to bring the fruits of the ministry to the world.